Here, wait a second. Okay. So, Sally, are you showing the slides?
Yes.
Okay.
I can see them now.
Okay, so go to the next one, please. Okay, so we know that this is the month of June, so we're a little late here because it is May in the United States. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's unbelievable to some people, but 1 in 5 people have a mental illness. And I think what we're going to do today is talk quickly about the difference between mental health and mental illness. With Sally's help, learn how to recognize the signs and symptoms of mental illness, how to respond, what the resources are, particularly in our area here for people living here. Then talk about a little bit about global and cultural perspectives, because different people have from different cultures and backgrounds, and share our stories if there's time and questions and answers. Thank you so much for doing this, Sally. You are a goddess. Can you turn the next slide? Okay, so my background, as many of you know, the reason I started this with my poor technological skills is because I do have a 34-year-old son who has had mental illness since his teenage years. He has a severe anxiety disorder. So I have a great deal of personal experience with doctors, hospitals, residential treatment, emergency rooms, medication, ambulances, you name it, I know about it. I started a parent support group years ago that's still going on. I was on for several years the board of directors at the Montgomery County, where we are here, National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is a great resource. I've spoken, I write, I talk to parents. Sally, go ahead, describe yourself right there. Okay.
Sally, you're on mute.
So, as a mother of a teenager myself, a first-generation immigrant, a health promotion specialist who is working very hard to become a health educator. So I have firsthand experienced myself how difficult to navigate the health system in the US. So I believe mental health is as important as physical health. I felt the need to take the certificate of mental health first aid class because I believe that I need a real world practical knowledge to support people who are suffering from mental health issues. So I'm hoping that my work will be able to bridging the cultural gaps for immigrant families in the United States and reduce language barrier and health disparity. So everyone in the United States can live up to their full potential.
Okay.
Yes.
Next one. The next slide, the basics of mental illness. You know, everyone has mental health. I mean, even my dog has mental health. You know, my dog could have a good day or a bad day, depending on, and we all have mental health depending on how we sleep, how we eat, what we exercise, how we exercise. Mental illness is actually an illness of the brain. And the scary part really is that it's no blood test for it. And I'm not sure there ever really will be a blood test. They do some DNA studies, but we haven't gotten there yet. And it can be difficult to diagnose and treat because the signs can be, there could be many signs and you're not really sure what you're looking at, whether it's normal, often teenage development, or just really an emerging mental illness. The most common mental illnesses we have are anxiety, bipolar, which used to be known as manic depression, depression, and schizophrenia. Other mental illnesses can be what we call concurrent. They can occur at the same time. So some people can have two different things. Someone can have anxiety and also an eating disorder, or someone can have anxiety and self-medicate, use substance abuse, and drink a great deal because they're in such pain. Okay. The causes and complications So, yeah, the next slide. So, you know, I'm not a doctor, but I know that there's some inherited traits, there's brain chemistry, there's environmental factors. And what's really interesting is that 75% of lifetime cases of mental illness develop between ages 18 and 25 while the brain is maturing. So that's why you often hear about mental illness emerging in students in their teen, college, and young adult years. And you might have a child who is 100% normal in every developmental way, and then this comes on suddenly, or in my situation, you saw early signs of it, but it didn't really come out in full force till maybe age 17, 18, 19, 20. Many of you know people with mental illness and you don't even know that they have mental illness. They take medication, they have therapy, they go to work, they're treated, they lead perfectly productive lives. What you often hear about though is people who have what I call serious mental illness, who really can have trouble functioning, having friends, relationships, holding a job. Especially untreated mental illness can lead to suicide. When we often hear about these some of the horrible shooting situations, I often think it's someone who has what we call untreated mental illness. They're not thinking clearly. They think that, you know, the mother is trying to kill them, or men from Mars are in their brain, and that's why they act in a very bizarre, delusional manner. Okay, the next slide talks about treatment. To the next slide. Yeah, so my husband put this word variable in. This was not my original idea, but the idea is to have early treatment. And the problem with medication, if you are diagnosed with the anxiety or depression, you're given a medication, but you don't know if it works until at least maybe 3 weeks, a month, 6 weeks. So during that period of time when you're waiting to see if the medication works, you still have symptoms. Oftentimes you have to change the medication. Then after a couple of years, the medication may stop working. The medication may have side effects. It's not our best area of medicine in terms of how we treat it. And the symptoms are hard to respond to. And many times we don't know what we're seeing, which is why Sally took this course that's offered nationally. It's called Mental Health First Aid. And Sally, go ahead on your next slide and talk about your course.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank for my professor, Sijing Wang. She's a professor in the School of Psychology in University of Maryland. I took this course with her in 2018 in the Montgomery public school system. So first of all, mental health, I believe mental health is fundamental part of our overall health and well-being. So this made clear to me, and I decided to get more involved in mental health work because at my son's school, a student committed suicide. So mental health first aid is just a skill-based training course that teaches participants how about mental health and substance use issues. So in the New York City First Lady, Karen McKay, mental health first aid trend, she said, first aid for mental health is just as important as first aid for our bodies. So for many, we all have this situation when we know that when we see someone suffering from a heart attack, we know that we need to perform a CPR. At least we know that we need to call 911. But when we feel people knows that what to do if we see someone suffering from a panic attack or experiencing a substance abuse disorder like alcoholism. So, and that's why it's important to take this course. And this course is very simple and very practical and it's helpful to almost everyone. So mental health first aid, it takes to the fear and the hesitancy from people away of talking and having a conversation about mental health. It provides an action plan to teach people safely identify and address the potential mental health illness or mental health issues. So the action plan is called LG. So number one is assess for risk of suicide and harm. So when we are worried about someone and and we would like to talk to them. So first of all, we need to really, before we approach them, we need to consider when and where is the best place that we should talk to them. What are they experiencing? And then we need to assess and assist with the crisis. We need to consider several warning signs. We want to know that there's some warning signs, for example, if they have a persistent sadness for more than 2 weeks, or if they're thinking about hurting themselves or hurting other people, or maybe they're just having difficulty focus or concentrating on their work. So maybe also like for younger people, maybe agitation or moodiness can be a sign of having mental health issues. Not really because they are kind of like have a mental illness, but they are suffering from some form of stress or some form of pressure from work or school. And that's what the first thing we should do. Secondly, we need to listen non-judgmentally. So listen non-judgmentally is the most important thing that I think in that the LG action plan, because so more often people often we don't know. Often if someone complain to us, we'll tell the person that okay, that's what you should do, and we just reply automatically. But listen non-judgmentally means we listen, we give support, and we let the people talk about themselves and their feelings without feeling being judged, so that you care and don't dismiss their feelings. So I can give an example here. Many years ago, I have a very close girlfriend who came to talk to me about her a marriage with her husband, and she was very sad that she might have to. She was considering leaving her husband. I did not listen to her, and she told me that she was not able to sleep for many days, and she was not able to eat. When she told me that what she's thinking, I immediately told her that you should leave him, you should cut him loose, you should take your children with you, and there are plenty of fish in the sea. So after I talked to her, and she did not want to talk to me at all anymore. I never see her again. And I think that was so, that at that time, I didn't know that was not something appropriate for me to say. And now I know that that's not something that she needs. I'm sure she have a plan, but she want me to be a fan. She want me to listen to her, and I did not do that. I feel very bad for that. So now number 3, give reassurance and information. So give them the support that you are able to provide. For example, emotional support or practical support. Give the person information that might be able to help them. So for example, you can show them some reliable websites or some fact sheets or some files that might be helpful for them. And number 4 is encourage appropriate professional help. So if your friend is an adult, you might want to ask them if they want to see their family doctor or also a mental health professional. If she's a student in the college or in the high school, we will tell them that they can, first thing they should do is to talk to a counselor at school. So number 5 is encourage self-help and another support strategy. So help strategies. So number one, maybe we can encourage them to join a support group, maybe do some meditation or deep breathing and relaxation, mindfulness training. Secondly, what we want to ask them to do is to encourage them to seek support from their family and their friends and others. What we mean is that we don't want them to suffer silently and quietly. We want them to get help and to talk about it. So next. So mental health first, that don't and do and don't. So do is we need to remain calm. We need to tell them that, say that I'm here to support you. How can I help you? And number two, we need to use open and non-threatening body language, which means that when we sit down, we will not cross our hands and we will not cross our legs. We have our hands and shoulder relaxed, and we show our body that when we talk to them and give them feel that we're accepting them. And we will be reassure them, we tell them that we will help you, we are here be with you, and we will be caring and empathetic and patient. So what we don't do is we don't want to stare at them. We don't want to use patronizing statement like, this is not a big deal, you should forget and move on. So now go back to Nancy.
That was great, Sally. And this is this course that Sally took is available all over the country, and it's what, 2 or 3 days, 2 weeks? What's the time involved?
Yes, I think it was for me, it was 4 half-day class, and it took, actually, I think it's 10 half-day class, about 2 hours, yeah.
Right.
And they will give you a certificate with completion.
Now, this doesn't give Sally a degree or anything, but she will know now. And you can go online and look up mental health first aid and take the course and read about it, because the first thing really, you know, to try to convince someone to get help, this can be a big problem. Many times someone says, I don't need help. I'm not sick. I'm not going to a therapist. I refuse to go to a psychiatrist. Forget it. Or the family doesn't recognize, or they say, oh, he's just going through a phase, or it's not really a mental illness. That is a big problem. And in the United States, our system, I can say, is not so great, but if you have a true medical emergency, if you come home, as I once did, from being away and find your child has taken too much medication, you have no choice but to call the police, 911. But what I learned a little bit too late is you need to ask if you have if you're not too anxious or worried or upset to ask, but ask for a crisis intervention team. Many people in the police are now taking CIT training. So they do what Sally was saying, they assess non-judgmentally, they are not threatening. When my son had his crisis when he was a teenager, the police came and they put him in handcuffs. Now that is not a really great way to act. It's pretty threatening. So now the police many of them are more trained to assess the risk of suicide, ask questions, stay calm, be helpful. We also have many suicide hotlines that a family member can call. If you have a non-emergency situation where you think someone is struggling with depression or anxiety, you want to probably find a therapist. You likely would ask your internist, your primary doctor, maybe your rabbi or your priest or your minister for a name. The problem often is that people, well, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but we also have social workers here in the United States. They're not doctors, but they can do therapy. A psychologist is someone with even a little more training, also does therapy. Only a psychiatrist, which is a medical doctor, can prescribe medications, but for someone with a serious mental illness, they might go to see a social worker or a psychologist for therapy, and then separately a psychiatrist for medication. The other big problem that I could spend about 10 more hours on is access. I mean, here in Washington, D.C., we have many, many doctors, but even with all those doctors, we do not have enough psychiatrists. We definitely do not have enough psychiatrists who accept health insurance. That is a really big problem. And if you have to, let me see, I'm just looking ahead at if you have to go to the hospital, another issue in our hospital system is that we have what's called psychiatric beds. So if you go to the hospital with your teenage son and your teenage son has a broken leg, you'll get seen right away. There's an orthopedist, it will be treated right away. But because of a lack of psychiatrists and a lack of psychiatrist beds, you could go to the hospital in a mental health emergency and wait a day or 2 days to find a bed. During that time period, your child might be, or your adult might be in the emergency room because they don't have a place to put them. And this is a big issue even in Washington, D.C. Let's see, what's the next slide? The next slide. Oh, so one of the things that Sally and I were talking about was really how every culture has different perspectives on this. And some people, for all sorts of different reasons, see stigma or shame. I can tell you that in my family, certain of my family members were not so, one of my family members said, oh, he will grow out of it. It's not mental illness. They were embarrassed. They saw shame in it. Sally and I have talked about how some Asian groups don't want to express distress to the public because they don't want to bring shame to the family. There's been studies that show men in particular are reluctant to go get help. There's been other studies that show that African Americans in the United States often would go to their pastor or their minister rather than doctors. There's other studies that show Latinos in the United States are statistically less likely to get help. And definitely international students on US college campuses are much less likely to seek help. They don't want to tell their families what's going on. And that often happens. Let's see, let's do the next slide, Sally. Sally's going to talk again about her perspective in the Asian American community on.
Yes. So yeah, as an Asian American myself, I have witnessed people who is suffering silently and struggle daily with mental health issues. So the first difficulty in the Asian American community to dealing with mental health is the cultural values. As a connective society, many Asian Americans are known to have strong family obligation. They identify their value with their ability to care for their family and community. So they fear to be labeled with a disability, and their life will be a failure if they are not able to live up to those stereotypes and obligations and values. So people avoid seeking treatment and avoid shaming themselves or their family or their community. It's also a taboo issue for many Asian cultures to talk about mental health. Talking about mental health is that is supporting an idea. It's a taboo to talk about it. So it's supporting the ideas that mental health is shameful. So struggle and issues with mental health should be kept private, and should be an issue that within your family. So you should not be openly talk about mental health issues. And also in the many Asian American culture, there's a religious belief. Some religion believe that a mental health issue is something that you've done in your past that lead to the mental issue you are having now, or maybe you're temporarily controlled by evil spirit. So that those beliefs and misinformation also is a struggle for people to get mental health service. Another problem, of course, in the United States is the racism and discrimination. For example, the model minority myths. So want to be a model minority, being part of that stereotype, which means you can enforce the ideas that all Asian Americans are fully integrated, assimilated to the US culture. So they are highly educated, they're smart, they're well off, they have overcome all the racial bias, which is not true. So this ideology puts pressure on those within the group to make the standard and the expectation. And that's why they're under pressure and they're likely to suffer from anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. So further the problem, in the United States, we also lack of cultural appropriate resources. So many healthcare professionals do not have a special training to accommodate and address the cultural needs and the experience and the values within the cultural difference. So I think this is not only a problem that faced by the Asian American community, but it's a problem that faced by many immigrant communities. So I think the things are getting better. So in the recent news, Naomi Osaka, the 4-time Grand Slam winner, went on to reveal that she has been suffering from depression since the US Open in 2018. And she said, anyone that knows me knows that I am introverted. And anyone that has seen me at tournaments will notice that I often wearing a headphone, as that help my social anxiety. So here in Paris, I was already feeling vulnerable and anxious. So I thought it was better to exercise self-help, skip the press conference, she added. So I think when she was able to talk about it, I think we should feel very proud of her. She can take care of herself and she's able to move the first step. And I'm sure she'll be back and winning very soon. So what she say is very brief and her action gives hope to everyone. That's what I think her action will do.
That's terrific, Sal. That's amazing. Okay, let's take away, can we take away stop sharing the slides so everyone can see each other? Okay, how do I put okay, here we all are. You can unmute yourself if you like, anyone, because what I was hoping was that maybe Emily or someone from another part of the world would want to share a little bit about your part of the world and how that part of the world looks at mental illness.
Yeah, if you want.
Yes, please. Tell
So,
us what you do, Emily.
Yeah, I was a social worker in France. I worked all my life with kids and adults with mental illness. But after diagnostic and after treatment, when children and adults are living in residential, I don't know the name in US, but it's like a residential house for
residential
people.
treatment, yeah,
Yeah.
same.
And I think the biggest problem in France is the visibility. We don't speak about mental illness, and people don't know how to act, to react when they are in front of people with mental illness. We have to speak about the disease, to speak about how to react, and I think the visibility is the most important things now.
Emily, do you think is it because people are ashamed, embarrassed, not lack of knowledge? Why don't people want to talk about it?
I think that all the time we want to put these people a part of the society in France, and we don't speak about them. But they are less ashamed now, and it's a good thing.
Progress, yeah.
It's a big progress. But the biggest progress we have to do is to speak about this in school, with children, and everything came with education.
Yes, most definitely. That's excellent. Jose, Carla, I don't want to put you as representatives of the entire Central America region, but do you have any thoughts about what you see in Guatemala, for example? If you want to say something, Carla or Jose,
Okay.
please.
Here in Guatemala is the same as Emily says. Here in some regions, the people feel embarrassed about mental illness and feel like strange to talk about the topic because it's something not usual to talk. And in some regions of the country, is the mental illness doesn't exist. That people believe this is spiritual, it's just something magic, and they have rituals and something like that because they don't go to the psychology, just make their natural processes, and they believe this is some spiritus in the body or something like that. And sometimes in some regions, people have like this a discrimination with the people with mental illness because they don't know that about the topic and they don't know what they can do or how they can interact with these people. They strategy to not to be far for these people about these people.
So it's interesting what you said, because that sounds like what Sally was saying about the people who use natural remedies or think that it's some, I don't know, curse or bad thing that they need to eradicate from their bodies. Yeah.
Yes, and sometimes some people think go to the psychologist is because you are crazy or it's something bad, but this is it's a bad idea about the topic because all of us sometimes we need help. We need to express what we feel, or we have stress. We can need to share with another person to express what we are thinking or what we are feeling, and we need to express with other people, family or husband or mother or father, but it's not the same. We need to talk with a different person.
Right. Claudia, do you have anything to say about, I don't want to put you on the spot either, about Germany? I mean, if someone has a problem in I mean, can they find a doctor right away? Is there, you don't have the health
Yes.
insurance problem.
Yes, in Germany, the situation is, I think, not a little better than in France. There are still people who think, oh, it will go away. There's no illness, it will go away. But if you need help, you get them. There are a lot of psychotherapists in Germany, but there are a lot of people who are going there. So if you really need help, I think it's still a problem. And we have this clinics where you stay, but some friends of mine, one of them, she's studying psycho. She will become a psychotherapist, and she said, "Oh no, please don't go in these clinics because there are too few people for a lot of patients." And in theory, it looks good, but in it's practical, it's not so easy to get help and to get it quick. If you had to make an appointment with a psychologist, you have to wait for a month.
Yeah.
And that might be a problem.
That's a big problem that we're seeing on our college campuses, that a student calls a college health service, asks to have an appointment and says, okay, we can see you in 2 months.
Yes.
And you have a problem today, which is not very helpful to be told you can be seen in 2 months.
Yes.
So then they have to go maybe off campus into the town or the city, but then it's hard to find a doctor in a place you don't know. And then you have to figure out if the doctor takes your health insurance, which of course they usually never do. And not very many people in medical school want to become psychiatrists. It's not a popular profession. I don't know why. Anyone else? I don't see a lot of faces because you don't have your video on, and that's fine. But anyone else have a comment to share? I'm happy to hear from Jose has a comment to share.
Now, based on what you are just sharing and just talking about, there is a thought that I have. And, you know, I really love technology, and I really know how technology can connect people from all over the world. And now, after this pandemic, this mental illness crisis, I think, has increased because the insulation and stay alone, it's not easy.
Absolutely.
And then, because of the technology, there are new ways to connect the doctors with the people in need. But I say this is something that people are doing because they want to help more people around the world. But at the same time, I say this is good. However, what happened or what will happen with a personal connection? I feel afraid that doctors, psychologists, they start using more technology to support and to help people around the world, but they are probably not helping them because we are breaking the human connection doing this virtual, you know,
Telehealth.
yeah, exactly. So it is not the same. I think visit a psychology online, I don't know if that is the best idea, especially because usually you have some mental illnesses because of the lack of people around you. So I feel
Right.
afraid if technology, instead of helping in this area, will, I don't know, will affect more the people. So I don't know, what are your thoughts about that?
There was an article yesterday about a new, what do you call it? A bot, B-O-T?
Yeah.
Did you see that article?
No.
Well, there's in the middle of the night, if you have a problem, you go on and you tell your problems to a robot, basically, to a bot who is trained to say, thank you for telling me what your problem is. How can I mean, it's the
It's like
the-
asking Siri, help me with my problem.
Yeah, yeah. No, you have a good point, Jose. That's a real issue. But I mean, to be honest, in the United States, and there's some places in the rural communities where you cannot find a psychiatrist. So telehealth is better than meeting a doctor on the screen on Zoom is better than nothing, but the doctor really can't see how you move, how your face is, how you can't get the personal connection is not totally there.
That's true. Yeah.
Susan?
So I had two things I wanted to say. One about Jose's comment. I think, a balance, just like in everything, might be helpful. Definitely to start in person meeting a therapist is really great, but then, to maybe continue with that person once you have a connection, online just makes it so much easier for people to actually follow through. Just like anything, if it's easy to do it, people will tend to do it. Like if wearing a mask is easy, they'll do it. If it's complicated, they won't. So
if you could exercise on Zoom, I would do it. But since Zoom doesn't let me exercise, I don't exercise. Very good point. I'm sorry, Susan.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no, so I mean, I just think maybe some sort of hybrid approach might work well. The other thing I wanted to mention was that, the crisis in, the teenage community is rampant. And, my sister is a pediatrician, and she said that her recommendation would be for in medical school, for any part of the medical program that particularly working with children, that you be required to study psychiatry. Because
Wait, they're not required now?
no, I mean,
Pediatrician?
you don't have to have any sort of, they're different disciplines, right? Like if you're an orthopedic surgeon, you don't necessarily know anything about, somebody's eyes, right? So they're different disciplines, and there needs to be like an actual, like not just overlap, like an interconnection between, working with children and mental health. Because I mean, right now, for the past year, pretty much everything she had to deal with was either might have been a physical issue, but it was connected to a mental health issue. I mean, the past year was particularly difficult for teenagers and younger people.
Especially.
But, I think that, start, like somebody said, I think Emily, teaching children in school, yes, starting from square one with children, but also in our medical profession, like incorporating mental health in all of the different disciplines of, medical coursework is also, in my opinion, going to be.
Absolutely. I know that when our son was having problems, and my first call was to the pediatrician, and he couldn't get us off the phone quickly enough. Call a psychiatrist. I don't do that. Call a psychiatrist. They didn't then anyway have the training.
Yeah, but the problem is there, like, I guess a bunch of people were saying, there just aren't those resources. There aren't enough psychiatrists. And so pediatrician can say, call the therapist, but there isn't one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Madge, do you have any connection to what is your take on all this?
I'd like to say what Susan said about doctors having, specialized training to, understand, being able to assist in any way, even if it's just warmth and support. Teachers need that too. And I almost thinking every field. And so what I guess surprises me, and I'm wondering if any of you know, if in the schools starting in preschool, those who are, can go, because there's, you can go to social worker or psychiatrist. Psychiatrist has more training, right? But the social worker may be better in every way, maybe just a warmer person. He has more compassion. But I'm wondering if, like, starting, like I said, in preschool, if there was ways to train kids and parents how to understand the world a little better, how to understand human psychology. And that's still an evolving, very evolving subject. We don't know
Yes.
that much. And you can go to a doctor and the whatever psychologist, psychiatrist, what, and maybe not get the help you need. It could worsen the problem. Because I've
Yeah.
heard from friends and, you know, some family members, they think they're being helped with pills and therapy, talk therapy, and it doesn't work. So I'm wondering that, like, I think it was Susan who said, like, telehelp, right? If it could be available in every aspect, basic, just very.
Well, I know that my grandsons who are 5 and 7, in their schools, they learn what to do with your feelings if you're angry, and how to, you know, they learn some basic emotion regulation control. You know, they learn about yoga and calming, and there is some of that. But I remember when my son was in school, he was in a private school that had 12 grades, and there was one counselor for 600 children.
My cousin was a
That
counselor.
was ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. My cousin was a counselor in a very affluent school district. She said, if someone was in her office, they were ringing, the phone was ringing off the hook. She already was talking to someone and people knocking on the door. That's how much she was needed. And for us, you know, it's like what, kindergarten through 6th grade or something like that. Yeah.
So that's why the course that Sally took is so important, because everybody, even if you're not a trained social worker, you can learn how to respond and how to encourage someone. Like what you said, who was saying before, something about the person who was depressed and sad. You know, there are some people who have depression and they're extroverted and they're smiling and they're happy. You have no idea that inside they are suffering. They're not wearing black clothes and crying all the time, but they have depression. And those are the people who, and you can't say, oh, you'll get better. Snap out of it. It'll go away. Those are all the wrong things to say. So even if we learn just to be more accepting, right, Sally? I mean, that's what you were saying.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. 5 years old know that, like, they cut their finger, they will put a Band-Aid, but none of us know that if we feeling stressed out, what kind of step do we take and to look after ourselves and to look after our family members, and that's the way we said. And we need also education. The mental health literacy is important, and the mental health first aid program is important. And we feel that it's as important as the CPR now. It's really we still need many people to take this course and get a certificate and be able to help other people.
And if someone comes to you and says, I'm really miserable, I want to kill myself, it's okay to talk about it. They teach you, right?
Yes.
It's okay to talk about suicide. Talking about it doesn't make it happen. It's okay to say, how are you feeling? How can I help you? What can we do together to help you? Ignoring it makes it worse. Am I right in that, Sally? Right? You can.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and often when people come to us and tell us something, we kind of give them a quick solution and say, you know, that's not a big deal. You should do these things, that, and you should do that. And that's what usually not people looking for. I mean, if they know what to do, they've already done it. And that's right. So we just tell them to do this and that. That's not what they want. So it's important that we listen and maybe we back what they have been telling you, and to make sure that they know we have heard them and we are giving them.
Yeah, it's very hard for someone like me, especially. I always want to give advice and the quick solution, but that's not probably what they always want. I have a friend whose daughter took her own life in March, and my friend found her daughter. It went to her daughter's apartment, and the daughter was dead, and she found her. And my friend called me. I was the first person that she called, and she was just crying hysterically. And I knew I had to just let her cry a little bit. I mean, I wanted to say, call the police, do this, do this, do this, but she didn't want instructions from me. she just wanted she had a lot of feelings, and she's, you know, it's been very difficult, and there's great grief that she feels she didn't do enough when the daughter was alive, but we only can do our best. And sometimes, anyway, does anyone else, I don't want to end this on a sad note, because there is a lot of help out there. We need more help, it's true. And we need to be kind to each other, especially at the end of this pandemic when we've been so isolated. Anyone else have another question or want to put something in the chat if you're too embarrassed? And I just want to say thank you then to Sally for really being so open about some really difficult stuff. It's great. And thank you, Carla and Jose and Claudia and Emily and everybody for participating and sharing. And there is a great NAMI chapter here, and anyone can always email me. I can give you, I know all the resources, all the names. I know who not to call, most importantly. That's very important too.
Yes.
Who not to call. I know that ambulance rides cost a great deal of money and insurance doesn't want to cover them. I know all the terrible stuff. But so thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate it.
And I just want to thank Sally and Nancy for creating this program, because, you know, this is through an English language school. So, you know, you think, well, how is it related? Well, of course it's related, right? Mental health is related to absolutely everything on the planet. And I think it's just wonderful that you've created this program. And, you know, I hope that maybe you'll continue it and do, you know, something in the future. Now that, you know, you've, you know, brought together this group of people, hopefully each of us will go and in our own communities, like create something else. And in that way, you know, sort of slowly and locally, you create, you know, smaller communities that understand these issues.
That's very kind of you. And we're all thinking of Naomi Osaka. It was incredible what she did, and we wish her well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally, so much.
Bye. Thank you.